9:02 a.m. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Adamdine?
Okay, present.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Becker?
Here.
Mr. Jeff Downs?
Here.
Ms. Goodman?
Here.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Here virtual.
And Mr. Picardi?
Okay, let's see, roll call approval of agenda. I'd like to amend the agenda to have, under new business, add, new 11A will be budget.
Make motion, we accept the, agenda with the, adjustment. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carried. Public comment. Is there anybody, here with us or online that would like to make public comment? Okay, seeing none. Contour Airlines representative. Do we have a representative from Contour?
Nope.
Okay, well, was that just a carryover?
I think it was.
Okay. Approval of minutes. Is there a question on the minutes, or are they in a condition to approve? So, seek a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay,
Second.
Mr. Becker, motion, second, Mr. Walker, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Susan, would you like to provide our treasurer's report?
Sure.
please?
Need you guys to approve the bills for July that you have in front of you. I didn't know if you guys had any questions about it. It's all pretty standard, honestly.
You know, is there any commentary that you would offer on any of the budget line items?
No, but we'll go over that when we discuss the budget there.
Or, accounts payable, capital fund, or?
No, we didn't have any capital stuff, so it's just, like your general airport fund. We didn't have anything in Fund 481.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the accounts payable general fund line A, treasurer's report?
So moved.
Motion, or a second? Second by Becker. Roll, please.
Mr. Adamdine?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Downs?
Yes.
Goodman?
Yes.
Picardi?
Yes.
Okay.
So then you have your, revenue and expenditure report in front of you. This is kind of a good month to see where you're at because, we're caught up with Contour through June, and they're also paid us through June. When you look at that July ending number, right in the middle of your column, your year-to-date balance, 10/1 of 2024 to July 31st, 25, that truly kind of gives you, where you're at. You know, it says negative 51,863. We'll have to see how August and September plays out, but there is some reimbursements that haven't come back that'll offset that a little bit.
How much do they total, Susan?
So it's the PFC, so probably about $20,000. And then you're also like, your revenue is a little bit, running behind because, you know, we bill, but then they pay for their, the hangar rent is like a month behind because upon the time you bill it, they send it the next month. So really like I can give you like next month what we can kind of expect because I'll kind of like see where that's at. Because you won't get those September rentals until October. So your revenues are always kind of running a month behind where your expenses are kind of true to form. We'll take a look.
So if we build on October, or on September 1st, and we said we're approaching our fiscal year with our handful of tenants out there, as opposed to billing later in the month, do you think there would be a better chance of collecting our revenue?
We can try.
That doesn't really make a difference ultimately from an accounting standpoint because the books stay
Yeah,
open
right.
past December 1st until all those things come in.
And then I
And
accrue
they
it
get
back.
reasonable
amended and adjusted
Yeah.
and,
So are we on a cash basis or accrual?
We're at accrual.
Okay.
So whether it comes in October or November, it still gets to September.
Do you want to discuss the deficit and why I think, if we're approximately 50 negative, we have 13 of receivables, that would be about 35 negative?
It's just your some of your unexpected, I mean, your repairs and maintenance are always a little over. I don't know, Barry, do you have, and then you also have like your fuel, different things.
I think the column to look at is the last column, which is percent of budget used.
Right.
So this
You're
is
at
for
72.
July, so that leaves August, 2 months left. And so anything that's above 100% means as of 10 months in, we've already outspent it. So,
Just like your repairs and maintenance. And then, you also have your trial balance, which has got your 2 different cash accounts. It kind of summarizes your revenue and expenditure, so basically all your revenues and all expenditures. And then there's also the, True Beach Aviation information, your rent, your landing fees, and then your fuel. Any other questions?
Motion that we accept the, financial statement as reported.
Support.
Mr. Adamson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Justin?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Picardi?
Yes. Okay, committee reports and discussion. Executive committee did not meet. Capital Projects Committee, is there any update from the Capital Projects Committee? It looks like not. Mr. Harry, do you have anything to add? Okay, Budget Committee, some budget discussions were had. We'll talk more about those under the new agenda item. There was not a formal budget committee, rather an informal conversation among folks, so we'll address that here shortly. Bylaws Committee, are we gonna adopt a change, or should we?
I forgot to bring those, sorry.
What's been going on?
Well, just
Just a little busy.
Transition Committee did not meet, but will be meeting again. Airport Director's Report. You know, while you're, pulling up the Director's Report, the Transition Committee did not meet, but I believe I've emailed, the board. We did receive an email from Kyle, who has declined our offer. So, we are posting, the position again, and, a discussion point, and the reason why the Transition Committee did not meet, is because Kyle just declined the offer, I believe, last Thursday. Wednesday, late afternoon, or Thursday. So we haven't had time to formally assemble yet.
We had how many finalists? 3 finalists that went through?
We did. We had about 15 resumes. I think we did 6 telephone interviews.
There was
3
backup ideas.
Well, we can have a transition and full committee meeting right now and have a little discussion. I really don't know that candidates number 2 or 3. I I guess, in my opinion, I would conduct another search.
Say no?
If I can interrupt, Ralph, someone, just joined. If you could identify yourself, please?
Hello, this is Ralph Osach.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Ralph's with us. George, back to your comments on candidates 2 and 3 and moving on.
Might be careful.
Okay, thank you. So, Dylan, would you agree with,
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, great. So, our 3 members of the transition committee here would recommend to the board that we go out and conduct another search. Board, do you have any opposition to that? Okay, well, that is a demonstration to the world of how efficient we are. So,
If I can just make a couple
Please.
comments on that. The candidates 2 and 3 clearly did not compare to our first choice. But in my experience, looking at our peer airports, those are the type of candidates that generally are hired for this position. So we do need to be careful that we may not be setting our standards too high in this process and causing us challenges in actually continuing to operate. So I just throw that out there. I understand, especially comparing Kyle to the other candidates, and even going further down that list of, you know, the other ones that we did phone interviews with, who all are, you know, potentially viable candidates, but not with what the board has stated they're looking for.
you know, Barry, I think that's a real keen observation, and that's a good observation. You know, I would also call to the board's attention, I think that it's a extremely competitive market. And the reason why it's an extremely competitive market is because, Barry, correct me if I misspeak, please, but Escanaba, Helston and Emmett County, Manistee, Southwest Regional Airport, and Bent Harbor are 4 that I know of that would be.
And whether it's public yet or not, Ms. Marquette will be, the airport director just accepted the county administrator job there. And Houghton just published their director position last week.
So, I think, I translate that into, competition will be fierce for people that wanna do this line of work. I think there's 9 EAS airports in Michigan. Houghton, Marquette, Escanaba, Pellston, Manistee. 5 of 9 are looking for a director, more than half. So I think that's a perfect segue into, I just forwarded a proposal that I received after 5 PM on Friday, that frankly I haven't read through yet. But given that competition of more than half of the EAS airports and some other small airports that are not EAS looking for a director, I think we should discuss enlisting an executive recruiter for some assistance. I think assistance would be beneficial to the group on casting a little wider net, perhaps some background on where the market is on wage and compensation and what those packages look like. guidance and insight and assistance, given the compressed timeline. So, Barry noted, didn't say I'm out of here, but he said, we gotta keep the airport running. And to keep the airport running, we need a director. So, Barry will either, direct us longer than he planned, or he won't. If he doesn't, we don't have a director to run the airport. So, it's kind of a full court press right now. And, I would welcome thoughts, from the group about how we can put ourselves in a position to say we marshaled all the resources we could to find the best quality candidate in the market as soon as reasonably and commercially possible.
Yeah, I'll say this, the transition committee spent a lot of time, getting to the point where we all voted on that offer letter, so to have it come back fruitless is frustrating, but, finding good people takes a lot of time, and I think it would be appropriate to bring on a consultant to help at this point.
The only question I would have, can Dean Hunt help with this without having to go outside to someone new, or they seem to be pretty good? I mean, this good pool come in the first time.
Well,
That's not, I would say that's not their specialty.
No.
So, I mean, if you're, I
Just
mean,
curious.
I don't know
That's
if
not typically something we offer. There are some consultants who are specifically for aviation and look for aviation directors. But that's not typically something that we do.
So you could provide us names of organizations?
I'm gonna have to do a little research. It's been a while since I've been in contact with these headhunters, as we call them. But yes.
Did you reach out to that organization that you just sent an email to? Have on there? Or how did-
yeah, in your inboxes, you all have one proposal that I received after 5 on Monday. They are, they specialize in aviation exclusively. So we have one proposal for consideration presently. I don't know that we need to discuss it in detail now, just because nobody's really had an opportunity to review it. There's another, executive recruiting firm that, I've used for real estate and finance in Illinois, who in the last several years, has branched out into aviation. I haven't spoken with the owner of the firm yet. We've traded some emails, but, I think this, the options are, as follows. We can call a special meeting in a week or so to review proposals and award an engagement if we choose, or we can, set a budget number not to exceed today and allow the transition committee to vet the proposals and work within whatever the budget is approved. But I don't think that we should wait a month to come back to our next regularly scheduled meeting to get a search started if we choose a recruiter.
Concur, what's the general rule of thumb in regard to what's the fee structure? Is it a percentage? Is it a flat rate?
I quickly glanced through it, it was $10,000 flat rate is what I saw, and then some maybe additional hourly rate.
We've used, in using recruiters, it's been up to 25,000, so that's in the market.
Preston's correct in identifying that was the number in this proposal. When I started the conversation with the firm, they have different options. And they basically said, option A is we will manage the entire process for you vet the candidates. We will work, I think, even on a contingent fee basis, where if your candidate, comes in there and something doesn't work in the last, or in the first 3 months, it's 100% of the fee back to you. If they terminate within the 6 months, it's 50% of the fee and so on. And their price on that was $48,000. And so I said, nah, I don't think that's gonna work with our group. What's next? And so they then said, we have option B, was, a scaled back version of that, where less of the money was refundable if the candidate terminated within a period of time, and that was $20-some thousand. More in line with what you suggested, Karen. And I said, I don't know if that's gonna work. What do you have, what's option C? And so they basically said, we'll give you access to our database. You can blast it out to 60,000 people in our network that we've touched over the last 20 years. And we will do an initial vetting, but you're on your own through the process. So, I would go back to trying to obtain a few proposals to really understand pricing. I think it will be, probably somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 or $25,000. But I don't know. We'll see where they come back.
So what's the budget looking like as far as what do you think we can withstand here, Susan?
Well, depends on how you're gonna pay for that. You can pay for it out of that PFC account, and you do have money there. Is that something that they could use? Because that's not
For anything that you want.
I would say the PFC account would be appropriate. From my perspective.
Is that a motion?
So I would move.
We don't know an amount yet.
That's why we're getting there.
Well,
20?
That'll get you in the game. We need to adjust.
How much is in the PSC?
196,000.
But you offset that.
Right, with the 100
Right.
right now, yeah.
There's a net positive.
But I think we got some pretty reasonable and frugal people on the transition committee, so I would, move we set aside authorize up to $25,000 for the transition committee to select a, headhunter consulting firm.
Second?
Lindsay, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Adamdot?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Jeffdot?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Picardi?
Yes.
What was your question?
At all? Yeah. Okay, well. Barry, back to you for
That's my
director's report.
Just before you start, okay. So we approved that. So, short time frame. Who's contacting them? Okay, so you'll contact them, and then we can get something rolling probably within a week. They'll know that we are done here for getting something done. Okay.
Yeah, we've got one proposal in and another conversation in queue. I'll make, some other calls. We've had aviation folks came at our meeting in January. I can ask them. It's a little bit of back and forth. You call somebody Monday afternoon, they call you Tuesday, call
Sure.
Joe on Wednesday, he gets back to you on Thursday, and there's your first week. Good.
All right, just wanna make sure we
Yeah.
know who's leading this and moving it through. Thanks.
Barry, do you have any knowledge of any executive recruiting firms in the aviation
No, I
space?
mean, the ones, I mean, they reached out to us, but at the same time, I see their name all over job postings left and right, so they're probably not the top field during contact. Don't know that.
To their credit, you know, they reached out to us when we first started this proactively. And, when I called them, same day I got Kyle's termination letter and follow-up, they got back, that would be last Thursday. And they worked till after 5 on Friday
Mhm.
to turn in the proposal, so.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Barry.
So as you are all aware from the, email I sent out last week, we did have an incident with our, contour flight coming in very early Tuesday morning, the Monday night flight, last week. No injuries, no one was hurt, but the aircraft did nose gear, exited the runway and required work to address, and passengers had to be offloaded at the site and carried back. But Contour staff did an excellent job. In fact, talking with Devin, that he was surprised that the passengers were as cooperative, upset as things were. One of his comments was they were more upset by the fact that they were 5.5 hours late than what happened once they got here. But the runway and everything was cleared, checked, and reopened by 7 a.m. So, as far as incidents goes, that was good training and worked through processes, but it's about as, you know, low key of an incident as you can get, so we're all thankful for that. I don't have any update on the GSA lease, nor on the final visit from TKS to tie in our door upgrades into the security system on the front door. The other thing here that I have is that we have been notified that our annual FAA inspection this year will be September 17th on site, which, I mean, is the September. But that's good. It's not during our construction, so that's also good.
Hey, Barry, how long have we been waiting on TKS?
This project has been spanned multiple years, so it's back and forth on it. It's kind of a low priority on everybody's side right now. Their final half 50% payment is held up on this, so that's, you know, we're able to operate fine without this last piece, so I'm not pushing it with everything else that's going on. So
Okay.
It's not causing any issues, and it's saving us cash right now.
Okay, thanks.
This is something that came into me last Friday, and somewhere here, I have hand-ups on it. So it didn't really make the agenda. If you could pass one of each of those around. So Stacy Bitework, reached out to me last week. She now works for a consulting lobbying firm, and, she has asked us to consider, drafting a letter of unsupport, I guess, for this legislation pending before Congress. And what I'm handing around are her email to me after we talked, as well as a potential draft, letter of support here. Specifically, this is with regard to the Credit Card Competition Act, which essentially is a piece of legislation being driven from some very large retailers, all the Walmarts and Amazons of the world, who don't like paying high credit card fees. The other side of that is high credit card fees go to support credit card rewards programs, which are disproportionately benefiting airlines, airports, travel, hotels. So they are reaching out to all the airports in the state, asking for their support of letters, because it is generally in airport interests to not have these changes, because a large portion of airline profits come from their credit card rewards program. Could potentially dramatically change under this act. So I said I would bring it to the board, and we've generally never been asked for anything like this. I think Stacy in her new role down in Lansing is, reaching out to some old acquaintances as well. So that is what I have. I don't know a lot more in detail. I have heard of this in the past. Her email talks about some of the statistics for our industry, but that's really all I know at this point. So does the board have any desire to pursue this, or would you prefer not to get involved?
I don't think it's gonna really have any consequence whatsoever, in the outcome. And, I think that our time working with legislators should more narrowly focused on things specifically and uniquely attributable to this airport.
I would agree as far as calling legislators and saying, hey, this is our position and why. If you have a letter that you sign off on as a board and you send it off, and it's really not a time crunch, but we are in the travel industry, part of the game.
I'm hearing 1 for, 1 against, no other comments, so.
I didn't hear a motion.
Unless.
Well, I guess what I would say is I could contact Stacy and say, hey, if you've got a specific letter, which I guess this is probably
Yep.
it. If anybody's interested in it, I could have the admin, rework this a little bit, and we can, come back next month if we wanted to sign off on it. and send it in.
Yeah, I want to read this bill here.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll postpone this then until next month. Thank you. Enterprise rental car update. So, I did hear some comments as people came in this morning that we've got pretty much all the signage in place. So there's counter signage, there's a rental car return thing there. Their parking spots are all assigned and labeled. So for the most part, it is ready. Contour has been continuing to provide their staffing, but from what I know indirectly through Contour is they're having staffing challenges. So the individual that they had targeted to be their first employee here has decided not to continue that. They are going to a plan B. So the last Contour heard is they're hoping to have someone in here now by the end of this month, as opposed to, it would have been like 6 weeks ago originally. There's limited car availability, and they are good at prompt about paying their 10% commission. So we did get the first check from them and report for July. In the entire month of July, they did 10 rentals here, so basically 1 rental every 3 days. So what they're doing right now isn't really working. Not surprising given how it's starting. Victorian is still renting, and they rented significantly more than that in July. So, you know, at this point, I'm starting to have concerns that they may just decide to pull out because it's been a rough start for them. I don't think we could have made it any easier, how they've approached it, but as we now kind of get out of peak summer and head into our slower season, it's going to be difficult, I think, for them, and that's starting to cause me concern. So
I think,
this is what I know, so I'm just commenting on what I know.
yeah, I would say from my perspective, I haven't really seen a full rollout from Enterprise on it. I mean, we just got signage up, so I'm,
Until they have staff.
sure. So, you know, we've made the space available, and we've got an agreement with them, so it's kind of, it's on them to develop the business as well. And I would say if there's something that we can do to, get the word out that the availability's here, you know, here's your options when you land in Manistee. You can rent from Victorian, you can rent from Enterprise, and spread the word. But I've kind of been under the impression that it's been a little bit of hush-hush until we get our feet under ourselves.
I mean,
So to say
it
it's
is online,
ending before
so where
begins.
people normally look, there is there,
Okay.
but there are operational issues, I think, with how things appear online, limitations that are, I'll give you an anecdotal story. Not that you should put a lot of credence in anecdotal stories, but the CEO of Eli Lilly flew in here sometime in July. Was originally going to book with Victorian, didn't like their rates. Interesting, a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. Found that Enterprise was here, made a reservation with Enterprise, and then Enterprise contacted him and said, no, we can't rent to you because we only rent to airline passengers, and you're flying in on a private jet. So he ended up with no car because Greg was then out of cars when he came in. And he was like actually okay with it. I mean, they arranged for a private transportation and, you know, got to where they needed to be. But it's just an anecdotal story about the challenges that we're in right now.
For all those listening to our broadcast meeting here, I think we should follow up with the CEO of Eli Lilly and personally apologize on behalf of this airport for the inconvenience. And I think it'd be wonderful if his office sent an email to the CEO of Enterprise Rent-A-Car and expressed his experience at this airport with Enterprise. And maybe that would help break a logjam. I also think that maybe what we could do is request a meeting. I have spoken with Roger in June and in July. You may recall Roger Stewart is their head of operations, I believe, for the state of Michigan. And Weston is a regional manager. And from a staffing perspective, you know, I think in July, Contour and Enterprise signed an agreement where Contour's employees could rent the cars. So that was supposed to be a staffing solution until they had a permanent person in place. And Contour's team does that with other rental car companies at other airports. So there's something going on with Enterprise's system. And, you know, Contour has been great in sending their leadership to our meetings to address areas of mutual concern. I think the board should ask for Enterprise to make a report and have a question and answer session with them. So, Barry, can you, Ann, draft a letter to Roger and ask them to, be present for our September meeting? And that would be a wonderful summer recap, as it will be the third week of September.
Do you know how long Victorian's running? How long is that contract for?
Well, there is no
Month to month.
contract, but, what I talked with Greg on Friday, I guess it was, and given our airport closure, which we'll get the details on this in a little bit, starting September 22nd, 2 weeks, he's basically planning on stopping the 21st, and not resuming in October. Okay, moving then on to numbers, so, the only famous line in literature that I can think of at times like this is, best of times, worst of times. So, our employment numbers for July, as you'll see, 50% improvement over last year. We have capacity to meet our demand. Now, that 2,538 passengers is slightly below my projection. I was projecting 2,600, and maybe I thought we could actually do better than that. They came in right in the ballpark, but a little bit lighter than I was projecting. But still, it's 50% increase over last year. I mean, it's busy here this summer. Our restrooms and plumbing system is getting a workout. But then you look on the on-time performance, they only had one canceled flight, but 57% of flights were delayed, and I'll break that down a little bit more in subsequent slide. For an on-time percentage of 42%, which is the lowest on-time percentage of any airline we've had since December 2009, so 16 years ago in winter, via Great Lakes Airlines, and if you remember them, they were notorious for not being reliable. So, now, we just had an update at the end of last month, so, you know, that, and what you heard last month, they knew this was, you know, where things stood. It's just now we've got month-end numbers, dictating it. So slightly worse than June was, which is significantly worse than the spring was from a on-time performance standpoint. So still getting the passengers, but the performance and reliability is not there currently.
And is this attributable to Chicago O'Hare?
I mean, it's all of the things that they talked to, at our meeting. I think it was the 28th last week, it was a week later, so it was pretty much the end of the month. So it's all the things they were talking about, fuel availability, just general Chicago O'Hare congestion and, you know, issues in the summer. You know, there's no one cause for everything, but some of those O'Hare-related things are what are driving these higher. And then when a flight comes in late, crew rest dictates that the morning flight goes out late. There's a schedule change that, I don't know if it took effect this weekend or if it's taking effect right now, for next weekend, where they're basically bringing in those flights an hour earlier to give an extra hour of buffer on that. So they've made some adjustments to schedule to accommodate that, along with, and again, they mentioned that in that last meeting, when they were in town. But here you'll see statistics for July, and you compare it to the last 2 months. The average delay was 2 hours and 23 minutes. Of those 70 total delays, 5 were short, 13 were less than an hour. 16 were less than 2 hours, but 36 were more than 2 hours, with the longest being 8 hours, over 8 hours. And as it ties into our incident earlier, I mean, that flight was coming in at 1:45 in the morning for an 8:40 flight, so that was an example of some of those significant delays. So, again, we were just updated really in this time period on their awareness of the issues, steps they're taking. I believe it was next month that we asked them to come back and give us some updates. So, you know, really status on that. Then if we look at airfares, so pretty much what we've been seeing now under Contour and recently is that Traverse City, over the years that I've been here, has dramatically transformed as an airport. It used to be a very high fare place to fly out of. They've got now competition, capacity, that is driving their fares down significantly. It used to be easier for us to kind of undercut them a little bit. Now that's really not possible in a lot of cases. But we are not the most expensive in our region, so that honor still goes to Muskegon. So you can, and I'm not sure why that's what's attributable to that, because Denver Air Connection, EAS carrier, operates out of Muskegon, similar model, interlines with both American and United. Why their pricing on average is a little bit higher than ours, I'm not sure. But you know, we're not too off the mark, but we are a little bit running a little bit higher than Traverse City is right now, and you know, then significantly higher than Grand Rapids, where you've got even more scale there to drive fares down. What is still a saving grace for us is the fact that we don't charge for parking. So if you take some of those extra fees out of the equation or factor them in, that impacts our fare. But parking, you know, if you've got a family of 4 and you're splitting that savings across 4 tickets, it's not as impactful if you're just one person flying and, you know, you're incurring that entire cost on top of your ticket. So, you know, this is a measure, but it is variable depending on the situation. But it does make us much more competitive than even, you know, Grand Rapids or Traverse City when you start taking into factor those charges, because parking at Grand Rapids is expensive and it's becoming so at Traverse City too. Any questions on any of that? Again, it's not much changed, but kind of the current snapshot.
And we keep watching our own, like, I come by here in this parking lot, it's so packed. So we continuously watch our capacity.
I was actually expecting that at some point we would outstrip our capacity this summer, and we didn't.
Okay.
Part of that is that in the summer, we are dominated by people flowing into our community.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're flowing in, you don't park a car here. It may be more the shoulder seasons when northern Michigan people are utilizing us to
Sure.
fly out.
Sure.
That when it's less, who should want to leave here in the summer?
Yeah.
I mean, no one should. So we'll see, especially I think in October,
Yeah.
because there was one day in October last year. It corresponded with, I think, maybe a board meeting or some other event where there was an extra few people in this room that we were out of spots in the parking lot. So we may see that, but we did not hit that. We were close, but we did not hit a parking limitation this summer.
And when people are doing, like snowbirds, getting out of here, parking their vehicles here, are we directing them to park in a certain area?
traditionally have not, because it's never been an issue. When it becomes an issue, we will have to address
I'm
that.
just noting like plowing and stuff, I've noticed, it's like you gotta work around, I don't know, if
That's-
they were all in one space, you wouldn't be able to, it'd be as big a deal.
I mean, is it possible to cordon off a section, just say long-term parking over a week?
We could, we couldn't now, but, as we got into winter, yeah, we could do that, yeah. Any other comments or questions on any of this?
So what I heard is in September, park against the fence.
Then moving on,
One question. With respect to pricing and competitiveness, what is the degree to which Contour's layered pricing impacts our overall competitiveness? Is that worth the conversation?
not, I mean, unless they want to give away in certain cases, if they added $0 onto the fare out of Chicago, it would still be more expensive than a fare out of Grand Rapids. It's just, airlines dynamically price markets on basically what they can get, and because it's an interline, it's that Chicago fare plus our segment.
Okay.
Where that changes is if you get to the point of it being a code share, because then we become a market that the airline dynamically prices, and, you know, then there's more flexibility. And I think that, you know, is something that Cape Air brought to the table, and I think at certain points in the 4 years they were here, that helped, and at other times it didn't, or actually even hurt, because of how American shows pricing. They show interlines below their code shares, so therefore, even though it was a lower fare, sometimes it would get buried because they want to promote their code share. So it depends, but that isn't, you know, something that could alleviate that. Contour, a year and a half ago, felt at that time, talking with Matt Chaffetz, that they were close with American on that.
Code share?
Code share. That has gone quiet recently. One of the conversations I had with Susan, I can't think of her last name right now, who was here last month with Contour, just asked her to kind of follow up and, you know, kind of where does that stand? Because I think long-term, Contour and American have a deeper partnership than they do with United, since they basically hub out of all of the American hubs from Charlotte to Chicago to Dallas to Phoenix. But that hasn't moved forward yet. So, I don't know, did I answer your question? I probably rambled on.
Good for now.
Okay. The only thing here that I have an update on is the major project now has a start date. I reported last month that I had a pre-construction meeting where that date was going to get set, after, later in the day of the meeting we had on the end of August, or at the end of July. So September 22nd is the beginning of our construction project. Overall, it's a 4-week project. Within that 4 weeks, there is 2 weeks of basic closure of our main runway. That runway closure will start the day the project starts and run through October 5th. So Contour has gone through and basically canceled all of those flights. They've actually, this becomes a revenue hit for them because they're not getting subsidy to fly these flights, they've actually added extra flights over Labor Day weekend and through a couple of the weekends in early September to see if they can recoup some of that revenue by flying those flights they're allowed, just in different periods. So all of those kind of schedule changes have worked out, and those flights are now available for purchase through those periods. The last piece of this project was the bill funding, and you're gonna have, I've referred to this as bill now for 4 years, because that is what the bipartisan infrastructure law, that's what it was known under the Biden administration. Trump administration has renamed it, so you will see in the grant, it's referred to as something different, but it's what I've been talking about as bill funding now for 4 years, and it just now has a different name. So that last piece came through, so we now have all of the funding for this project lined up, so all aspects of this can move forward, and it will get done late next month and into October. And the approval for that last grant is later in the agenda. Any questions on that?
Is that 100% funded, or does the airport have like a certain percentage they have to pay on it?
The bill funding, I believe is 100%.
That's what I saw in something that came through here.
Yeah.
So when we do these, it's like every other project, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it in October, just like the people were supposed to come and redo my bathroom 3 months later. This is gonna, like, it's gonna happen here, and,
There are penalties if they're.
okay, good, all
I
right.
mean, and it's not that they're huge penalties, but there are financial incentives for the contractors
Sure.
to do it on time.
Okay,
I was just talking with Muskegon's airport director, and the same contractor is doing a much larger project down there that's actually supposed to be like a 6-month project, and they're actually scheduled to finish like 2 months early. He couldn't say better things about M&M. I think it's M&M contracting or excavating that's doing this project, or the general on this, so.
because it worries about, you know, having it closed for that
Yep,
long, you just.
Yep.
All right, well, good.
So the T-hanger doors, that is another bill funding piece in it. We have not yet received that grant, so not much update there. I've probably already given all of these tidbits, or most of them, on Contour. I guess some of the specifics. July was up 50%. I see the numbers there. August, we should end up also 50%, maybe 51 or 52% versus 2024. Right now, I'm kind of projecting August. I was originally projecting 2,600, just like July. I think we're probably going to be about 2,450, probably about 100 less than July in August, given where we are right now. So a little bit less than my projections. September and October overall booking looks good, but you know, there's 2 weeks of that 8-week period, there won't be flights, and that is going to have an impact.
So how do we handle people that may have pre-booked when the airport's closed? Obviously, they get a notification.
They've all been notified, and we've gotten calls on the airport side, because some people are skeptical. Well, we just heard that Contour said the airport's closing. We don't believe them. We think there's some issue on their side. It's like, no, this actually, they're telling you the truth. This is airport driven, so.
I already saw a Facebook post about it this morning. What's out there?
It is out there.
Yeah.
It is, mentioned on our website,
Prominently?
it's not, it's right front center that, what's going on. And Right Side Design and I have started talking about, we need to move in Contour and get some, proactive word out, to explain the situation. And it is what it is, but we need to make sure that people aren't
Thinking we're going
making
away.
more of it than just,
Yeah, exactly. And it'll only be temporary, not permanent.
So far, January through July, our year-to-date enplanements are up 35% versus a year ago. These are booking trends, so bookings still remain strong through the summer, which, you know, one would expect given the numbers through the summer. It's what I've noticed, or we typically see a drop-off of summer from a employment perspective. It becomes noticeable that summer ends here the second weekend of August, which we've now just passed. And pretty much like clockwork, I've seen the bookings drop off, the last week, kind of aligning with that period. So they're gonna start going back down as we, you know, go into our shoulder season. And again, this is just kind of where we ended up for July, is kind of comparison to our, you know, our dream environment, Frontier 2011. Contour's load factor was very comparable to what Frontier did that July. Frontier was operating a little bit larger aircraft, so 68% versus 71%. So overall, you know, good. But with a 68% load factor, that does say we still have a little bit of potential to, in future years, and, you know, grow some more during our peak. Not at capacity most days, although there are certainly some days where we're sold out. And kind of my projections for August and September right now. In some ways, this is, you know, premature, but I always like throwing some of this stuff out there as I'm thinking about it. So we are basically near the end of our first year of a 3-year agreement with Contour, which means we're about a year away from that process restarting for our next EAS selection. And it's really interesting right now what is kind of developing out in the marketplace. The pendulum swings back and forth in the airline industry, especially around whether or not there's a pilot shortage or there's a pilot surplus, and we are kind of actually now swinging back to the pilot surplus, partly thanks to Spirit laying off hundreds and hundreds of pilots recently. But when that swings to pilot surplus, then you've got spare pilots, you've got spare aircraft, you've got spares that are looking for work. And, you know, EAS is good guaranteed work, guaranteed profit if you manage the process well. So we're seeing a lot of activity, a lot of quality bidders in the EAS world right now. In Michigan, Denver Air Connection is aggressively bidding every opportunity within Michigan. They have been in Ironwood, which, if you know where Ironwood is, it's as far in the state you can get.
Central time zone.
Yes. They've been serving Ironwood for multiple years. They picked up Muskegon recently, and, you know, now are looking to build out a presence in Chicago. So anything in this region, they are bidding on. They are traditionally, other than Manistee and Ironwood, every other airport's been served by SkyWest under Delta, you know, for the last 15 years. Escanaba, in this last go-around, the community decided not to support SkyWest and decided to support Denver Air Connection, primarily driven by the fact that SkyWest is notorious for canceling a lot in the winter. And they were not happy with that. So that could actually potentially be a break in the ice of that kind of Delta SkyWest, you know, and, you know, bring some competition to EAS markets. Nationwide, DOT really for the first time in a long time is really looking at price. They just selected a bid for in a community against the community's preferences solely because they went with a low cost, the low price bid, and it was jet service. It was jet service for Air Wisconsin. Air Wisconsin currently has no flying routes at all because they used to fly exclusively for American, and American ended that contract, so they're scrambling to stay alive as a company, which would cause some concerns. But DOT said, no, this is the low bid. They've got all the check boxes checked. They've got interlines, they've got codeshare with American, they've got jet service, and they're $1.5 million cheaper. This is what you're gonna get. So that is interesting, as, you know, kind of it related to our last go-around where, you know, Contour wasn't the low bidder, and it took time to get our desires through. Right now, there are 4 jet providers actively bidding: SkyWest, Air Wisconsin, Denver Air Connection, and Contour. All of them, you know, providing a comparable product. Contour may be a little more hampered because they are limited to 30 seats, whereas all the other ones can fly 50. And what I've been seeing, well, 2 things. One is one I noted here, but the other one is, as these Contour cities are going out for rebid, Contour, with the increased competition, their new bids are 10 to 20% less than their previous bids were, because they're seeing the landscape and don't want to be pricing themselves out of existence. But even in spite of that, I'd say Contour is losing more bids right now than they're winning. It's a small sample size of 3 or 4 out of, 25 of their cities, but this is something to watch as we go forward, especially as we talk about their performance and other factors that may be driving some of this.
So, as you've been making this report, Barry, I've been thinking about what are actionable items, that we can do with this news, right? And, as I look at the 4 that are out there, my first question on SkyWest is aircraft size. It's my understanding that they're 50 and 70 passenger. They're larger than the Embraer and the RJs.
Well,
Is that true or not?
so that's actually.
I'm just tying it into our runway link.
It's a really good point.
To
and
see if that's an eligible plane.
No, that is.
And if it's not an eligible plane, I, just in the interest of time, don't even want to spend a lot of time talking about that.
So, of those, SkyWest and Air Wisconsin fly CRJ 200s or larger.
Mm-hmm.
And on paper, they can operate here. As Contour has demonstrated, no airline is likely to. So that eliminates those 2
Air Wisconsin,
potentially,
good.
or it leverages us long-term for justification on runway extension, which is also a long-term
Right.
picture piece.
And so, the news is that SkyWest cancels flights in the winter, and our runway is not conducive to winter travel for SkyWest planes. So now the funnel's working, and to me, it's coming down to Denver Air Connection and Contour, based on aircraft. And I'm wondering if Ann could, or you could call Ken Eftag in Muskegon, who has Denver Air Connection, and if we could get a little director's report, like you prepare, for on-time arrivals with Denver Air Connection, we can find out, is Contour no better or no worse than Denver Air, or what? And the other, so that's one action item, is to really flesh out how Denver Air Connection looks with respect to on-time, arrivals and departures. The second is, I think that someone, in addition to me, should develop some meaningful relationships in Washington with respect to our next EAS contract. Congressman Molinar's staff was helpful, but we are the only EAS airport in Congressman Mullenar's district. So it's not, an issue that they handle with a large degree of frequency. Notwithstanding Manistee and Muskegon, all other EAS airports are in Congressman Bergman's district, and his staff is intimately familiar with it. So, as we go to bid, I think we want to make sure that our relationship, not only with Congressman Bergman, but, you know, his staff is in place to help us advocate for that sooner rather than later.
The last thing is, again, this is I mean, we're a year out, but
A year will
my
come.
tenure is ending.
A year will come.
I really want as much information out there so that at least you've heard it, so that you know what questions to ask my successor, because they may not be as in tune to some of these things depending on what their background is.
And if you would mention to Brandon, I went on our Fly Manistee, website, and not on our homepage and not on our book flight section can I find any information about the airport closure.
No, it's only,
So to me, it's buried somewhere that's not readily apparent to the,
okay,
well,
okay.
somebody's got to dig to find it.
Okay. I think that's all that's here. And then, the last thing is, I have some comments that I want to make as I'm ending my tenure. So I'm gonna bring up some notes to talk about a few things. So, the first relates to our budget. So I know this has been difficult as it rolled up to the county level and there was pushback on what we were asking. I kind of wanted to frame a little bit as to why this year seems so different than we've been operating. And it really boils down to, from my perspective, 3 items. Number one, the amount in the budget for my replacement, a new airport director. With base salary, benefits, retirement match, employer taxes, that's roughly $125,000. Again, we don't know who or what, you know, that ultimately will be, but that's the ballpark. You've currently been paying me $55,000. So that's a $70,000 increase in our budget attributable to that. Number two is that the budget and all of the proposals that are being looked at and all of the stuff that's going on and kind of evaluating the future, all of those include one more staff person than we have today. So again, salary, benefits, employer taxes, et cetera. I'm roughly estimating $90,000 on that for an extra employee, probably a more senior managerial type employee versus just a worker bee. And, you know, part of why I think all of that is out there, it's like, well, if we've operated all these years with where we are, why do we need more? And here is my answer to that is we've been operating, and, you know, the Mead and Hunt study info showed that we are leaner than all of our peer airports. We've been operating, and I'm going to use the word safe here, and I don't mean that in the sense of safe from, you know, passenger, you know, airfield safe. I'm really referring there to safe in, if any one of our existing employees had an accident and was incapacitated for multiple weeks, there's no backup. Our schedule, they have a unique schedule that they like, but in reality, they get no vacation days. They work technically 52 weeks a year. They get no holidays. Whatever their schedule is, we're open 365 days a year. There is no redundancy. And like you're seeing me looking to transition, they're all in similar age timeframes, and it's likely over the next 5 years that you're gonna see a complete turnover of all staff. And there needs to be a funnel of new people coming in that provide so that someone announces they're leaving and, oh no, we've got a problem. So all of those reasons are, why all of the proposals out there have one increased staff. And then the third thing is, this has been mentioned before, but you've, as the airport, have seen part of the impact, but overall, there's a bigger impact, and that's the loss of fuel sales from Cape Air to Contour. The airport's impact has been about $10,000, but the FBO's impact, and thus overall total revenue to airport, is probably another $60,000 for a total of $70,000 impact. So when you're getting RFP proposals from, vendors, looking at our fuel sales, there's less fuel sales there than there was previous years. You add those three together, that's about $230,000 of fiscal impact change that are all being absorbed right now. And that is what's driving what you're seeing. So I just wanted to put that into context so that as you're looking at budgets and the struggles that we're having and how that then impacts the county, how all those things come together. So that was one thing I wanted to mention. The next thing, this is hard for me because this is personal. So I sat here last meeting watching a very informative discussion of the board as you were discussing Kyle's offer letter. I listened to the board and the statements of the board members wanting to do the right thing for our new director, wanting to pay him a competitive market wage, wanting to treat him fairly so that he, stays. All of those things that I would expect a board to do. And ultimately, you agreed on an offer letter with benefits to retirement match that's more than double my current compensation. Quite frankly, that was rather insulting to me. For the last 10 years, I've been subtly pointing out that I'm undercompensated versus my peers, and I've had significant conversations with the 4 prior board chairs to walk through my feelings on this. And in 10 years, nothing has changed. My implicit directions in my role have been to operate this airport as cheaply as possible, and I think I've done a good job of that. With this transition, that is no longer possible. The need to increase the director compensation to market rates and the need to staff appropriately, as I've just talked about, that's what's needed to take this airport forward. And it has been increasingly obvious this year as, we're 50% more passengers, everything gets busier. The amount of time that we have to spend fixing faucets and toilets and cleaning bathrooms is proportionately more based on that increased volume. But yet we're doing it with the same staff. So I've been in a position where I've had no benefits, no retirement match provided to me for the last 17 years. As a small business owner, the equity in my business becomes part of my retirement nest egg. And it is now apparent to me that the board's intention is to also essentially take that away from me as well, because everything I'm seeing is the direction forward is to not renew any agreement with Orchard Beach and to bring things in-house. Yes, I can sell the assets of what Orchard Beach has, but any equity I've built in my company goes away. And it's certainly within the board's rights to do all of the things that the board has done. I understand that. Business is business. But it bothers me, and I'll just leave it at that. So that's my second topic. Third topic, you, as a board, should realize that in 43 days, every single contract you have, airport director, Orchard Beach, Part 139, expires. You've got some very difficult decisions to make in very limited time. You've got 43 days or this airport shuts down. I'm not aware currently of any plans to address these issues. I'm not aware that the transition committee has moved forward reviewing or really considering the SBO RFP proposals that were put out there. They were submitted 7 weeks ago. With the rejection of our job offer for director, there is no obvious path forward that's going to get someone in place soon enough by October 1st. The board seems to have decided, again, to bring staffing in-house based on what the budget that you're being asked to approve today indicates. But no movement has occurred to make that happen, and again, in 43 days. So seeing what appears to me to be pending doom, over the last few days, I've put together 5 different options that I think the board are, from my perspective, the only options the board has at this point. And I would like to go over those issues.
Barry, as you're passing it out, I just want to make a couple of comments. Part of what, I feel I've tried to push, and I do push, sometimes in these meetings, is that we have to have a commitment to what this airport is going to be. I think it's very important, and, of course, as a county commissioner, we're always concerned about the budget stuff. But this started way back in COVID when ARPA funds came out, and I went to Barry and said, you're part of us. You should be up at the top of the list for getting some of these funds. It was just a different way of looking at this airport, making it be a priority instead of a rubber band and, paste kind of process of putting things together. And we are on and that was the whole thing about bringing in the jet, trying to move us to a different level. And so with that in mind, I want everybody to keep that in mind, that we just can't be, we can't MacGyver anymore, for those of you who know what that is. We have to, we're trying everything to level this up, getting enterprise in here, getting a jet in here, making very good points about our facility here is not going to handle it. We know that. And so what do we plan? Where are we going? We just don't want to keep making ourselves fit into a footprint that just doesn't work anymore. So I just want to kind of support some of the things you're saying there about, and do recognize that, yes, you have operated this place on a shoestring, and that is appreciated all these years. But that's why I keep coming back to board members. Where are we going with this? And it's a value in our community, and I just kind of want to make those comments.
So I now sharing kind of a slide on each option as I'm seeing that. Option 1 is what I see as the current path. Continuation of the current hiring process, adopting the budget as revised and on the agenda later, which infers directly hiring maintenance and operations staff. the cons or issues with that? Okay. But again, all contracts end in 43 days. And, you know, I doubt, seeing how long a typical hiring process starts, that a new director can be in place in 43 days. Can you spin up hiring and get people converted and all of those logistics done in 43 days? Would they report to? How would that all happen? I don't know if that's realistic or not. But if those things don't come together on October 1st, the airport is out of compliance with Part 139. As I mentioned earlier, our inspection is coming up on the 17th. Our inspector is keenly interested in progress on these items, because that's part of what they do. And if we do go out of compliance, I don't know how long we'll be out of compliance and what the consequences of that might be to the airport. It's also unknown at this point whether we can even provide basic services as of October 1st, because as I've mentioned, and George knows, as we've gone through the physical assets, the phone system is owned and operated by Orchard Beach. All the computers, all the networking equipment, all of the basic infrastructure disappears October 1st and needs to be replaced, or some sort of something needs to be done. And right now, with these timelines, this is going to be a very difficult transition. And my contract is over September 30th. No one's approached me and said anything other than that. So without having, you know, that institutional knowledge, you know, when someone does start, it's going to be a difficult transition. Now, are there things that can be done to alleviate some of those concerns? Sure, but I'm just laying out what I'm seeing. Option number 2, Orchard Beach put in a FBO operations proposal as part of the RFP process. That could be accepted for multi-year agreements, and as that proposal laid out, it shows the intention of Orchard Beach being transitioned from myself to the owners of Cadillac Aircraft Services, that they would bring maintenance here, maintain sightseeing flights, instruction and other services that are currently being provided here, and continue to operate the airport with the existing people, bringing in one more staff person, again, as we've talked about kind of that need. But this option is currently costs $60,000 more than the current budget allows. On the pro side, this is possibly the only option that allows us to remain in compliance with 139 and provide a smooth transition, given where we are. And I realize I'm saying that, and I have vested interest in that, so take that for what it is. Option number 3, the other RFP proposal from Soarin' Air. Under kind of that, you would continue director hiring, and, you know, potentially engage with Soarin' Air to operate the airport. That option is a little less expensive than the Orchard Beach proposal. It was $20,000 less. But Soarin' Air doesn't have currently any Part 139 experience, and therefore I would question whether they can be fully up and running by October 1st. You, again, would likely not have a director in place by October 1st, so that would make their transition hard, because who would they be reporting to? And their proposal didn't include things like having maintenance on site, so it's a little bit less, but overall not, you know, too much different from contracting out. Option number 4, Soarin' Air had a Plan D proposal where they would actually supply the airport director. The individual was actually someone who applied in the first round, was one of the candidates that we brought in for phone interviews. So the transition committee has met through the phone with this individual. So there's some knowledge there. This is the least expensive option. It would actually be $30,000 less than what the current budget being proposed today would entail. Cons, similar to the last SOAR and CARE proposal, they don't have current 139 experience. Doesn't mean that they're not smart individuals and can pick it up, but it likely would be a difficult transition by October 1st. Already mentioned less services, but this is a candidate for director that the transition committee interviewed at the first stage of interviews, did not decide to bring in for on-site interviews, so they've essentially passed on this candidate. So at this point, would the board feel comfortable to save money, to go with an option that involved a new airport director that they had passed on in the past? Could this all be done, contracts wrapped up, and everything happen seamlessly by October 1st? Unlikely, but anything's possible. Option 5. This is something that I rarely talk about because I've never felt it was in the best interest of the board. I've mentioned it occasionally over the years. Depending on what type of service we have, we are not required to maintain Part 139 level of certification. And that barrier basically is if you're dealing with 9-seat or less aircraft, you're not required to be a Part 139 airport. Or if you're dealing with a Part 380 public charter, which is how Contour currently operates, which is why they're limited to 30 seats. So both with our previous carrier of 9-seat or currently with Contour, we are not required to maintain Part 139 services. But we could never go higher without regaining 139. That process is likely, federal bureaucracy, is likely to take a year to get recertified once we go out of certification, because they will start over, we'll have to generate an airport, all of the manuals, all of the processes, all of the paperwork that they'll then have to sign off on, do inspections, all of those things would have to be done. I'm estimating that's a year-long process. It could take longer. Maybe in Stars Line, it could be slightly less than that. But in the reality of EAS bidding, no carrier that is better than Contour could realistically bid on us, because they wouldn't be able to start service until after all this happens. So we'd either have to proactively go back into 139 ahead of an EAS bidding route. But this is an option. You don't have to do ARF, you don't have to do all of the stuff that adds significantly to our cost structure here as a 139 airport. Could go away, but the risks are that we may be stuck with either 30-seat Contour-like service or 9-seat service going forward. So it is an option. So those are the 5 things that I see are out there. And then I also, all of these kind of have numbers associated with it. So the single sheet budget, it shows the original budget that the board approved in June, the revised budget that's on the agenda for approval today, and then my best guess at what each of these are based on the RFPs put in by, Orchard Beach and Soaring Air as to what those, would entail for the various options. With option 5, it doesn't generate a significant cost savings, and that's primarily because currently we bill Contour approximately $200,000 a year for providing Part 139 services. If we stop doing that, I have a hard time saying that we should continue billing them for that, so we lose $200,000 of revenue there. That gets then offset by, essentially a lot of other things that you can operate the airport with part-time people. They don't need any specific training, they just need to know enough to be safe, but not the level of FAA Part 139 safe. So that's my piece there. And that would end my director's report. And I'll say one more thing. This may seem like it's coming at you kind of at the very last minute. I really didn't want to stir up the water while Kyle had an offer in his hand, because I didn't want to be the reason that he rejected the offer because I'm making all of these issues of, oh no, we've got issues to deal with. But now once he's declined his offer, you've got to see what's out there.
Yeah, Barry, I don't think you're bringing this up at the last minute.
It's just
Out of-
evolved in the last week.
Well, I mean, I think the board's been going at a reasonable clip for the last year. Things could move faster if we weren't meeting every 30 days and taking snapshot, So I understand, I understand and empathize your frustration, with this process. I'm frustrated with it at this point as well as the offers evaporated, but, I do also see the urgency in figuring out what we're gonna do as a stopgap, because I agree with Barry, 43 days is not enough time to do something properly without having an impact on the airport.
Agreed.
I don't know when we look at the cliff. I don't think we can wait another 2 weeks or 3 weeks to look at the cliff. I think we kind of need to figure out what we're gonna do.
Well, let's start with the transition team. So, meet faster,
Well,
I mean,
I wonder if we don't need another full board meeting at the end of the week, and publish notice for it. And have, publish notice for it, and in that notice publication, an agenda item for executive session, and whether we decide to go into executive session or not, it probably should be on the agenda.
Not gonna close session?
I think your transition team needs to meet before the full board meets. To discuss
That's-
everything.
yeah, look at the options, kind
What's
of,
been
that's
put
like-
out here today, and
you've met with people, what does that look like? Do we have, another headhunting company that we're gonna talk about? I think there's things that can be brought to the full board. I'm not saying we shouldn't meet. I think maybe next week might be, but it's like, what details do we have to meet and talk about? Otherwise, we're gonna be here for 8 hours. Let's have 1, 2, and 3 priorities. If that sounds reasonable.
Well, while we've got everybody here, why don't we set a meeting date for, does Monday the 25th work? And that gives the executive team to,
Yes.
ponder a few things this week.
I'd like to do it yet this week. Why don't we meet Thursday afternoon or Friday?
You're talking the executive, or are you talking the full board?
Full board?
I'm not available, 25th, but that's,
Yeah, I'm available the 22nd, the only thing I've got on my calendar is at 9 AM.
I have medical appointments in the afternoon, so it has to be morning.
For what day?
Friday.
Second.
I can meet at the 22nd. At this point, I don't know if everybody can't be there. I don't know how we don't hold that against them, but at the
Right.
same time, the group has to move on.
Mhm.
So if we can get a quorum for the 22nd, I think we can do it.
Okay.
I'm also out of town until Friday, so.
What time do you return?
I'll be back, late Wednesday night, so I can meet anytime Thursday, anytime Friday.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
Put a time to,
what time do your apartments start in the afternoon?
I have to be in Covington by about 1:00. About 1:30.
9:30 in the morning on Friday?
You have a 9:00?
yeah, but if I gotta be here, I'll be here as opposed to there.
9:30?
What wording do you want on the notice for the purpose?
Airport for transition. Thank you.
And FBO.
You know, Barry, if you pull up the budget that we reviewed last Friday afternoon. Oh. Oh. I may have answered my own question. What offhand was the amount of Orchard Beach's proposed number?
$60,000 delta.
Just give me an absolute number to type in column B, where we have questions.
Well, it's already typed in that single page you have there. That one. The one that one is plugged in. So go over, look at option 2.
The 353,475.
353, you say?
Yeah, 475. That is.
Show me where 353 is in the option 2 column.
354. So if you go here and
Just show me the numbers,
Right there.
please.
yeah. So that's if you go with option
Contracted services
under contracted services.
Okay, there it is, 353,475, okay. All right. Well,
So something for us to ponder in the meantime, Barry, is, are you willing, originally we were talking through the end of the year, that changed. I think there's been due diligence in trying to find a replacement. Are you willing to stay on month to month until we actually get one? I understand, we are trying to find that one. We thought we had the candidate. Having said that, are you willing to stay on a monthly basis for a, undefined time? We aren't dragging our feet in this process, obviously.
As I said earlier, the board has taken actions this year. Business is business. So at this point, under option 2, I'm certainly willing to entertain that. Under other options, based on some of the things I've pointed out earlier, I'm less inclined to.
Sure. Okay. That's fair enough. That's something that's an important piece for us to know. Thank you.
I wouldn't say no. Things negotiated and
Yeah.
discussed, but less inclined to as well.
Barry, as I look at the budget totals, when we put in, 354, 475 is a budget number. I then get expenses, total expenses of 8598, 087.
What are you plugging into?
Well, we talked last Friday afternoon on a budget of,
That's the budget that has, airport hiring people, so it's got $200,000 or $240,000 of employee expenses, it's got insurance expenses, all of those go away.
exactly, but I think to address, and what I'm trying to do is double check my math here, is at a $235,000 transfer in from the county, we would have 281 in revenue and the same in expenses. And if we were to take the 235 transfer in from the county and not,
That's taking the fuel sales away, option 2. Because that would stay with the FBO instead of with
Well,
the airport.
well, I think what I'm trying to do here on the fly and address some of Barry's comments is, in my mind, it's not a foregone conclusion of whether there's an FBO or not an FBO. I'm trying to figure out if our appropriated budget allows us flexibility to do either. And if my math is correct, and if we adopt a budget which has a transfer in, I think we could still, the board could elect to have an FBO from one of the 2 proposals under the budgeted funds. The line items in the budget may change, but there's funding available to do it, unless my math is wrong.
What I put together is the budgets under options 1 through 5 show that options 2 and 3 do not fit within the funding. One is being 40,000 out, one is being 60,000 out.
Options 2 and 3 do not.
But options 4 and 5 do. So you have a range here of, with current budget, you could potentially save $30,000, or it's gonna cost you $60,000 more. In a multi-$100,000 budget, those are still big enough numbers, they're not huge. Are there other things that could be adjusted?
Mhm.
We could cut all marketing. that's $40,000 there, 25 from Contour, and that would make that gap $20,000 or 0 under option 3. So it's doable. It could be tight. It might cause us to have to go a few $1,000s more into our very thin reserves. It's not, the numbers don't show this is absolutely impossible. But at the same time, difficult decisions have to be made.
I'll wait for Jeff to return to proceed.
So each of these, we're trying to figure out what to do, not long-term, but possibly in transition, which could roll into long-term.
Well, I think if you go with the FBO, is that a 2-year
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
contract?
What are we talking?
The RFP didn't specify. I will speak on Orchard Beach's behalf. When I started and acquired Orchard Beach, we had a 5-year contract. That would be highly desirable. I'd probably say 4 years would be still reasonable. I could see moving for 3. So negotiation, obviously, there. But I think, and I'll tie actually back to the 3 interviews of candidates that we had. Kyle, who we chose, was a very strong proponent of bringing this in-house as soon as possible. He felt that would be in the best long-term economic for the airport. And I think he had the skills and experience to do that probably from day one. Both of the other candidates in the interview were asked that same question, and both of their responses was, that's too much to undertake at the same time, to transition to a new director and transition to a new operating model. Their recommendation was that you should do those over time. And that may be an option, is that focus on director, keep status quo on, keep an FBO, and then you've got a couple years to figure out how to transition down the road, but you avoid some of the short-term consequences of things. Again, I'm saying that with the vested interest in some of those outcomes, so take that as a grain of salt.
So really, a lot of the options, 3, 4, and 5 really have to do, well, even 2, I guess, is the Part 139. I mean, that's kind of the big issue.
That is what drives a lot of costs.
Right, yep. Can you explain a little bit in detail what that Part 139 truly is? Like, what it is?
It is essentially a airport certification manual that dictates everything we need to do to maintain the airport's Part 139 standards.
Mm-hmm. What are those standards? I mean, what do the
There
employees
are-
do that pertain to
I
the
mean,
Part
there
139?
Like 15 different areas of daily inspections to training requirements, to fueling requirements, to the Mead and Hunt study has a whole section of that, and actually Mead and Hunt in its for training had a whole module talking about what that is.
So 139, I'm just, in my head, I'm thinking that's an accreditation. What extra monies does it bring in for us?
Right now, to recoup the costs of that, we bill the airline $600 a day to provide those services.
All right.
So it's $200,000 a year that we provide.
Is that a gain? Is that a gain we're getting, or is that a wash?
It's more of a wash.
But that's one
But-
of your contracts, right?
What?
One of the contracts that we pay you,
Yes.
so FBO,
Correct.
airport director, and Part 139.
But by having 139 certification, it allows us to accept
Right.
larger aircraft.
Okay,
And that's-
right.
That,
Fuel sales, GA, anything over 9 passengers.
no, it's not, it's, what is specifically required from 139 is airline service, so technically Part 121 service, which is a 19-seat or greater aircraft operating, under commercial service, with the exception of if they're operating 30-seat in the special
Charter.
Which we're at with
we are
Contour.
at.
But that means you wouldn't be able to switch.
Yeah,
to-
if we have issues with Contour.
And
then-
one other thing
right.
I should
right.
mention, Stephanie Ward mentioned this to me, and I haven't had a chance to verify one way or another. I do not think it is an issue, but she raised the fact that are there potentially TSA requirements for
Right.
139?
Right.
I'm not aware of any, but that is something that would need to be verified. If you were to go down that path, would we lose TSA, which means then you couldn't fly into direct terminal?
So,
I don't believe that's the case, but she was unsure. I had this conversation with her.
for some historical background and context, for all here. Our initial budget request that we submitted to the county, when we asked for $300,000, would have allowed us, at that juncture in June, to pursue, either path. A path with Orchard Beach, a path with Soar and Air, or a path, to hire an in-house director, at the stated budget amount, $115,000. So that budget was approved by this board and sent to the county at truly no bias of one path or another, but a request to keep all options open and budget accordingly. And to the county's credit, both our elected officials and county staff, there wasn't a tremendous amount of pushback on that. You heard Karen say earlier in this meeting that, you know, there's been an effort since COVID to not have the airport be an afterthought, but to have the airport be a priority. And so, this board requested $150,000 extra for general operations, and it was largely embraced. Our board and our transition committee met, went through our hiring process, found a candidate that was within the budgeted amount, came back as a transition committee, came back as a full board, extended an offer, and the way calendars aligned, the county is out ahead of us on adopting their budgets. So in the spirit of reciprocity and a good working relationship with Manistee County, I had conversations with our candidate who reviewed our budget, had conversations with Lisa, and said, well, we adopted a budget in June we're in July, in August with a candidate, and candidate thinks that he can run the airport for $65,000 less than we put in the budget, specifically by way of two line items. One is a director, and the second, so reducing $40,000 by an assistant director and $20,000 by, reducing Mead and Hunt's, contracting fees, which I think we talked about if we rewind the tape in the last meeting. So, in the spirit of a good working relationship with our county and not trying to abuse the privilege of asking for more dollars than we need, and in observing their timeline, my conversations with Lisa were, I think if Kyle accepts this offer, we can run the airport at $235 instead of $300, and we make that request responsibly. I can't do it unilaterally, but we can bring that back and get it approved by the board. She says, okay, county's budgets are tight. You know, county's still giving us, what, $85,000 more than they did last year to operate. And so, I thought it was responsible for us, under the assumption, and maybe that's where I'm irresponsible, is making an assumption that, you know, Kyle was gonna take the offer. Had he followed through with that offer, and had we executed this budget, we could have done so by eliminating $40,000 in the assistant position, which he said he wouldn't have hired, and $20,000 on some of Mead and Hunt's consulting fees, because he thought he wouldn't have had to rely on them to that extent. So that explains how we started the process and approved a budget that would have positioned us to elect either option, FBO, with either Orchard Beach Aviation or Soarin' Air, or an in-house operation. All options were on the table in June, is adopted by our board. After our board made a decision we wanted to hire a candidate, we made this budget adjustment. And really, we could still, if the board decided it was in the airport's best interest, we're trying to bridge a $40,000 gap to go with an FBO. That maybe, in the spirit of good working relationships, is we stepped up the plate to cooperate with the county. Maybe they would with us if we found ourselves in a position where we determined it was best to go with an FBO in light of our circumstances that have changed in the last 30 days. So, I don't necessarily, that is exactly, in my opinion, how we arrived where we are today from a budgeting perspective. So, I really don't know. I would ask Lisa and Karen and Jeff, our county representatives, if there's any material difference to the county, whether we approve the budget today or whether we approve it on Friday, in light of everything that's transpired. But I think that's a accurate assessment. Lisa, do you have anything to add to in terms of how we landed where we were?
No, and I think, we're gonna adopt tentative budget tomorrow. It is that tentative. We are able to make changes within that month before we adopt the final budget. But I mean, I guess this is where, we created our final numbers to give to the board, throughout this process, so it would be up to the board to put that money back in or some back in to help with that shortfall.
The budget was submitted and changed as of, what, a week ago?
Yeah,
So, the airport authority really has anything else to do in regard to that. The money's been asked for, then we say yay or nay, or give you the number back and say, this is what you got to work.
Well, I think this board approved a $300,000 operating.
Correct.
Subsequent to that,
There's been discussion,
there's been discussions.
but
So-
only discussions.
And there is agenda item to certify or approve those discussions.
we need to have your final budget numbers, and that's where we came to the conversation last week, is so Susan can prepare the supplemental fund budgets. So that's where we started the conversation, because we had what was adopted by the board, and then after our discussion, we were gonna reduce it by, $65,000.
Yeah, attributable to the
Right.
assistant and the savings from
So-
Mead and Hunt.
Your budget does affect us finalizing our budget, so then we just have to come to the agreement of what that final number is going to be. And then in turn, if we increase that appropriation again, that moves our deficit up higher.
Yeah, tentative budget is just that, it's tentative. It's not gonna be adopted
It's like-
final till the September board meeting.
But it's a very good indication
Yeah.
as to what we're gonna adopt.
So we
Okay.
have, no, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just gonna say, so the catch is what deficit are we gonna run? Is it gonna be, for sake of discussion, 200 or 260?
268 right now.
Yeah, I know, I'm just using for a figure of speech.
So I hear in our budget, we have the ability, it's high enough that we will be able to take out, what, 40-some thousand possibly with that assistant?
We already changed their transfer in. We already
But the
changed that
request was
from,
made for 300.
the original request was 3.
And that, so that doesn't include that change.
Our budget right now, our tentative budget does,
Up to 300.
no.
No,
It's
it's 235.
At the county level.
Yeah. So we've got, well, yeah, yes. So we've got some things to ponder on between now and tomorrow, and we can still make the adjustment come September.
Well, that's kind of where I'm at, and, like, we can move forward, and.
Yeah.
That's
No
a
matter
smaller
what.
decision
Yeah.
than a decision on what we're gonna do.
Right, and if it is a higher cost, we have adjustment then. What to do.
Yeah,
Okay,
but the bigger decision is what to do with Barry and what to do with,
right,
for the manager and an FBI.
and that doesn't have anything to do with our budget at this point. I mean, it's in.
It does, but it's.
Yeah, it's not
This
critical.
board will have to make, in September, no matter what happens, they'll have to approve a budget.
Correct.
With whatever the county gives them, whatever, I mean, they'll have to figure it all out. It has to be adopted in September.
Today's numbers can be looked at as a lump sum.
Yeah, you can look at it, yeah.
Correct.
As a
We'll true up the line items
Yeah.
over the next 60 days. Dylan?
If I look at this and under option 2, the OBA, we are under that transfer in from the general fund at 235, which is, I think, the number we've been running with. And my personal opinion, between airport director's salary, assistant director's salary, under the OBA line, those are high. You got less responsibility, you've got less compensation for a director. That's my opinion. So if you,
I
between,
think the 115, if you look at that, is a little.
between the 115 and the 25, that's 140. If you drop down into the 80,000 a year range with $15,000 in benefits, that makes up your $60,000 shortfall, and we would be able to afford line,
An FBO.
column 2 with FBO and hiring
Or
a
transfer
director with
One thing
an adjustment.
not well accounted for in there, there's not a separate line item, and that's employer taxes.
Okay.
So that's,
I think that's included in the benefits. I think we did.
No, they're more.
wasn't, but,
Okay.
you know, there is not a separate line item for it, so, you know, that's 10%-ish
On top.
on top. So you gotta think more than just base salary and health insurance and benefits. There's also then a 10%.
FICA and Medicaid withholding employers' contribution.
But you are, and again, this gets back to a comment I had very early in this meeting about what it is we're looking for in an airport director. I mean, if we want someone with Kyle's qualifications, which would be wonderful, the market rate for that is what that is. We can get somebody with not that experience and let them develop it at a lower price point. So
I'm
there
with you.
are certainly, I mean, I mentioned, you know, we could eliminate airport marketing. Would that be terrible? Would it be good? No. Would it be terrible? We could probably live without it for a year. That's $40,000 there. $60,000 could be found. You know, this is budgeting. You know, it's a guess anyway as to what's going to happen in the next year. But it is starting to cause things to get tight for, you know, making those things happen.
So do we need to make action on the budget today?
Oh, I think we have.
And I would say let's not draw a line in the sand.
Will you guys meet tomorrow, is that true? Correct. And, well,
We're set for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So they're gonna go forward with 235. It is different than our request,
okay.
and
If we have to adjust between tomorrow and the
Whatever
ninth,
your deadline is.
the 16th of September, whatever that is, then we'll have those conversations. But I think that the transition committee team needs to, together. Before the.
Prior to Friday. No, it's just try to figure out a committee recommendation of what it is as opposed to sitting as a committee as a whole, if you will. Because you guys have more base knowledge on it than what we do.
Okay.
That or the executive committee, you can have one or the other.
They're the
Have
same.
to have some sort of-
starting
Well, let's
Wednesday?
kick it to the executive.
Oh, well.
I'm flying out today at 5 o'clock, I won't be back until Wednesday night.
We can talk by phone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it doesn't have to be in person, right? Like, three of you could like do a.
Oh, we'll be meeting. We can't meet until we get out of here though, so.
That's right.
Kinda like a black hole, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's see what the agenda is. New business, airport director. You take a motion in a second, I think we did on,
Yep, you did, take care of it.
MDOT infrastructure, have we talked about that, Barry B?
That is the grant.
Great.
So that was in your packet. It's a very, very long document. There's actually injunctions currently against the administration on how things, are rolling out. But I can bring it up on the screen. But again, it's the final piece of funding for the project that starts at the end of next month. Looking for approval of that, and because of how MDOT does electronic signatures, if I could be the authorized signer for it, I have the electronic signature already set up for my name.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the grant agreement with Barry as the authorized signer?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, motion by Walker, second by Jay Downs. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, any authority member comments? Okay,
I wanna add, just through the transition over the last, since I've been on the board, Barry, thank you for being so helpful through the transition, so.
I concur. Thank you, Barry. Okay. Adjourned.